So in your opinion, those leaders that they exhibit, let's say, high degree of belonging, if you will, or high degree of effort to exercise belonging, what is it that they do differently day to day, in your opinion, Nick? What do they do different than the others?
Well, I'm gonna go in order if you don't mind. I'll go in
Yeah,
order
that's fine.
of indicator. So with comfort, one of the things that they do is they ensure that whenever there's a change, that everybody feels clear about what the change is and what their role in that change is. How am I going to be successful with this specific change? And what's interesting about emotional and social intelligence is that when somebody feels like there's a change, but they're not clear, what happens is that we start to slow down and we kind of, like I was talking about, we dig our heels in a little bit because there's so much fear. So what a leader will do is they'll actually, a change is announced, but before the change is announced, they figure out exactly what is not changing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
why is that important, do you think? And what it does in being able to say, listen, I may not know all of the details of this change right now today, but these are the things I do know that are not changing that you can rely on. And a leader doing that in the
Creating the
face of
anchor, is it?
big change, it creates an anchor.
Yeah.
And that actually allows people on teams, and they can, and I've seen this across massive teams, not just, teams of 5 to 10. That actually, it's a lot more work because you have to be prepared. You have to think about how this change will impact these specific people. But if you do the pre-work for comfort in the beginning, right before a major change is announced, people go, I get it. I can rely on this, and I can move into the transition of change rather than feeling fear and not being able to get on board.
So
So that's, go
let's say
ahead.
some of our listeners, perhaps right now listening to our conversation, which is
Mhm.
absolutely interesting. I never seen this angle being taken on in that level of scientific analysis and measuring belonging the way you're putting it, Andrea. Which is, thank you for that. The audience, I'm sure they're enjoying this conversation, but somewhere, somehow, out of the thousands of people listening to this conversation today, somebody's saying, "Look, I've got a ton of pressure. I'm a leader of an organization. I've got a ton of pressure. I've got my investors telling me, hey, implement AI, fire 30% of your people. I like them. I want them to be with me. I've worked with them for many years. I've got pressure from competitors, economy. And then here you and I talking about belonging in such a, I want to say, I don't want to call it laboratory, but in a sort of a lab environment. Ideally, that's what you need to have. Ideally, this is how it works. But some people out there saying, how do I actualize this in this ever changing, the tidal waves that you mentioned earlier?
Mhm.
These tidal waves are not stopping. You're absolutely correct, Andrea.
Yeah. So that's such a great question, Robin, because I do feel like it's one of those things that people say, well, it's unrealistic for me. And then they'll give you all of the reasons why it's
There it is.
unrealistic
There you
for
go.
them. But what we have to remember is belonging is not 100%. So you and me, right? We are in this together. So what does that require? Well, what's fascinating about belonging is that if you're applying that concept of 50-50, it means that I actually have to do my own regulation.